In the previous demonstrations, I've been showing you a traditional Photoshop workflow where we take our photographic effects, isolate it to an layer. We might use some masking to isolate it to parts of the photograph. But there are some limitations to that. If we go out to third-party filters and come back in and then build up some more layers, if we want to change the settings on those third-party filters, we basically have to delete the layer. Now we have our intermediate layers, we can build it back up and reapply the adjustments. Let's look at this example here, and I've created this layer, create visible from these 4 layers. And if we went to our image, and let's say we did a hue and saturation adjustment, pretend like this is a third-party filter because it works in the same way. So we make our adjustment, but that's it. We can't go back and readjust it. We still have our layers here, so all we can do is delete this layer and recreate it again with another visible, apply another effect, and then go forward using this as an intermediate step. Okay, there is another way to work, and that's called Smart Objects. So let me delete this layer. And what we're going to do is, instead of doing this merge, we're going to bundle these layers inside a Smart Object. So I can select all the layers by doing a select and then a shift select to get them. I can right click and then over here convert to Smart Object. Now what it looks like is I've just flattened all the layers, did some sort of merge or flatten, but that's not what happens. If you see there's a small icon in the right hand corner that indicates to me that this is a Smart Object. Think of a Smart Object as a container. In this case it contains the layers. Now I'm not going to be able to do pixel level editing to this Smart Object. If I go ahead and try to grab, let's say, my paintbrush tool over here and paint on it, I'm going to get this message: this Smart Object must be rasterized before proceeding. And what it means, it needs to be turned into, it'll be a regular flattened layer. You can see that the Smart Object icon is gone. Well, we don't want that, so I'll do Control Z and undo that. However, I'm not stuck. If I want to make changes to the pixel level, I have to go into the container. And to do that, I just double click on the icon. And you see all my layers are back the way they were before. Also notice up at the top there's a new tab. So I have 2 files open now. The original file and the file that's contained inside the Smart Object, which is designated by a .psb. So let's make a couple of changes here. Let's, on my triangle, let me select the triangle. And let me put in, let's say, a new color for the triangle. Alright, so I have a new color. Let's also change the position of a couple of these items. So let me get up my move tool and let me move this right here. Okay. Close this out as you would a regular file and say, do you want to save it? Yes. And now my Smart Object reflects the changes that I made inside the layers. So this is more powerful, much more powerful than creating an intermediate layer with all the other layers baked in, because you can always go back to your original work and make changes to it. Along with smart objects is a concept called smart filters. If you remember when we were using third-party filters like our Nik or ON1, after we've isolated those changes on a layer, if we wanted to go back and say, oh, I didn't get this adjustment just right, our only choice is really to delete that layer and recreate it from the other layers that we had there and try to reapply the filter. But I may or may not remember what adjustments that I did. Well, if we do a filter to a smart object, something special happens. So let's go up to our filters, say Nik collection, and let's say Color Efex Pro. It comes up and tells me that Color Efex Pro has identified this active layer as a smart object, and it will now operate as a smart filter. Say OK. Let's do something to it where we can really see the results. So I'll just do a bleach bypass, and let me change, let's say, the contrast on it. Okay, so I set that up to 68, and I'm going to say OK. Now what you see here attached to this smart object is Color Efex Pro 4 as a smart filter. Okay, if I can take the effect off that I put on it, or put it back on, notice that what it did there in the background, it opened the Nik tools to reapply that information. But let's say I didn't like how I did this adjustment. So I can go down here and double click on Color Efex Pro, and it will open back up again. And notice my adjustments are exactly where they were. And I say, well, I didn't like that contrast effect. I think I'll take the contrast down. And say OK. And now it's applied. So I can go in and I can put as many filters as I want on this smart object and be able to go back into third-party tools and make an adjustment now or in the future at any point. And in our next demos, we're going to look at some real-life examples of that.